The following program has been provided by the Pacifica Radio Archives Preservation and Access Project. For more information, call 1-800-735-0230 or log on to pacificaradioarchives.org.
For 6 years, from 1960 to 1966, Carlos Castaneda served as an apprentice to a Yaqui Indian brujo, or sorcerer, named Don Juan. During those years, Mr. Castaneda was a graduate student in anthropology at the University of California at Los Angeles. His experiences with Don Juan led him into a strange world of shamanistic lore, psychedelic experience, and adventures in what Mr. Castaneda calls states of non-ordinary reality, some of which were frightening in the extreme, and all of which are fascinating in the extreme. His experiences with Don Juan are recounted in a book which has been published this year by the University of California Press, called The Teachings of Don Juan, a Yaqui Way of Knowledge. Mr. Castaneda is with us here at KPFA today, and has agreed to discuss the book and his experiences with Don Juan. Let me begin by asking you how you managed to meet this remarkable personality, Don Juan, and can you give us some idea of what sort of a person he is?
I met Don Juan in a rather fortuitous manner. I was doing at the time, in 1960, I was collecting ethnographic data on the use of medicinal plants among the Arizona Indians. And a friend of mine, who was my guide on that enterprise, knew about Don Juan. He knew that Don Juan was a very learned man in the use of plants, and he intended to introduce me to him, but we never got around to do that. One day, when I was about to return to Los Angeles, we happened to see him at a bus station. And my friend went and talked to him, and then he introduced me to the man, and I began to tell him that my interest was plants, and that especially about peyote, because somebody had told me that this old man was very learned in the use of peyote. And we talked for about 15 minutes while he was waiting for his bus, or rather I did all the talking. And he didn't say anything at all. He kept on staring at me from time to time. And that made me very uncomfortable, because I didn't know anything about peyote, and he seemed to have seen through me. After about 15 minutes, he got up and said that perhaps I could come to his house sometime where we could talk with more ease, and he just left. And I thought that the attempt to meet him was a failure, because I didn't get anything out of him. And my friend thought that it was very common to get a reaction like that from the old man, because he was very eccentric. But I returned again, and or perhaps a month later, and I began to search for him. I didn't know where he lived, but I found out later where his house was, and I came to see him. He at first, I approached him as a friend. I like, for some reason, I liked the way he looked at me at the bus depot. There was something very peculiar about the way he stares at people, and he doesn't stare. Usually, he doesn't look at anybody straight in the eye, but sometimes he does that, and it's very remarkable. And it was more that stare which made me go to see him than my interest in anthropological work. So I came various times, and we developed a sort of friendship. He has a great sense of humor, and that eased the things up.
About how old a man was he when you met him?
Oh, he was in his late 60s, around 69 or something.
Now, you identify him in the book as a brujo. Can you give us some idea of what this means, and to what extent Don Juan is connected, if at all, with some sort of an ethnic background, a tribal background, or is he pretty much of a lone wolf?
The word brujo is the Spanish acception, and it could be translated in various ways. In English, could render as sorcerer or witch, medicine man, or herbalist or curer. And of course, the technical word shaman. Don Juan does not relate or does not define himself in any of those ways. He thinks of himself that perhaps he is a man of knowledge.
That's the term he uses, the man of knowledge.
A man of knowledge. Or one who knows. He uses that interchangeably. And as far as his tribal allegiances, I think Don Juan is very much, I think his emotional ties are with the Yaquis of Sonora, since his father was a Yaqui from one of the towns in Sonora, one of the Yaqui towns. But his mother was from Arizona. Thus he has sort of a divided origin, which makes him very much a marginal man. Then at the present, he has family in Sonora, but he doesn't live there. He lives there part of the time, perhaps.
Does he have any formal livelihood? How does he earn his way in the world?
I wouldn't be able to discuss that. Rather, I don't think that I could at the moment.
Now, one point I'd like to clear up. It's something that I wondered about as I read the book. The book consists in large part of recordings of your own experiences in using the herbs and mushrooms and so on, and that Don Juan introduced you to, and then long conversations with Don Juan. How were you able, just as a technical problem, how were you able to keep track of your experiences over such a long period of time? How were you able to record all of this?
It seems difficult, but since one of the items of the learning process is a recapitulation of whatever you experience, in order to remember everything that happened, I had to make mental notes of all the steps, of all the things that I saw, all the events that occurred during the states of, let's say, expanded consciousness or whatever. And then it was easy to translate them into writing after, because I had them all meticulously filed, sort of, in my mind. That's as the experience itself goes. But then the questions and answers, I simply wrote them down.
Oh, you were able to take notes while you were...
Not at the very beginning of our relation, you see. I never took any notes. I took notes in a covert manner. I had a pad of paper inside my pockets, my big pockets of my jacket, and I used to write inside my pockets. It's just a technique, that ethnographers use sometimes, to take covert notes. And then, of course, you have to work very hard to decipher what you're written.
Yes.
But it has to be done very quickly, very fast. As soon as you have time, you cannot postpone anything. You cannot let it go for the next day or something, because you lose everything. Since I think I work compulsively, I was capable of writing down everything that took place very, very shortly after the events themselves.
I must say that many of the dialogues are extremely fascinating documents. Don Juan, as you record his remarks, has a certain amount of eloquence and imagination.
But I want to say, it's very, he's very artful with the use of words, and he thinks of himself as a talker, although he doesn't like to talk. But he thinks that talking is his predilection, as other men of knowledge have other predilections, like movement, balance. His is talking. Thus it was my good fortune to find a man that would have the same predilection that I have.
Now, one of the things that's most impressive about the book is the remarkable chances that you seem to have taken under Don Juan's tutelage. That is, he introduced you to various chemical substances, some of which clearly, I suppose, could have been fatal if they had not been used carefully. How did you manage to work up sufficient trust in this man to down all of the concoctions that he put before you?
The way the book's presented, it seems to heighten some sort of dramatic sequence, which is, I'm afraid, not true in real life. There are enormous gaps in between in which ordinary things took place that are not included. I didn't include it in the book because they did not pertain to the system I wanted to portray. So I just simply took them away, you see, and that means that the gaps between those very height states, whatever it is, since they are removed, it seems that it's a continuous crescendo, this kind of sequence leading to a very dramatic solution. But in real life, it was a very simple matter because it took years in between, it took months passed in between them. And in the meantime, we did all kinds of things. We even went out hunting. He told me how to trap things. He said traps were very old ways of setting out traps, and how to catch rattlesnakes. And he told me how to prepare rattlesnakes, in fact. And so that eases up, you see, the distrust or the fear.
I see. So there was a chance for you to build up a tremendous